If you can imagine it, you can achieve it, wrote famous poet William Arthur Ward. But if that is true, why doesn't everyone achieve what they aspire for? After all, imagination is not exclusive to few individuals. We all have imagination. Some possess it in higher degrees, some a little less. I personally think that the capacity to imagine does not matter. What matters is the ability to effectively harness this virtue, because it is not possible for everyone to do so. While people with a healthy mental makeup can effectively harness imagination, someone molded by chronic criticism does not possess this capability. Chronic criticism diminishes our ability to align multiple parts of our brain responsible for processing memory, ideas, and cognitive abilities, which collectively make up the complex function of imagination. But that is not all. It does something even more damaging. Criticism turns our emotions against us by only triggering a bad feeling for every task or goal. People with a history of criticism internalize these bad emotions and prevent themselves from having newer experiences. Eventually, these people tend to fall into a rut and fail to hone their skills and talent. Because imagining our desired life in the future stems from our conviction on our skills and talents. People damaged by criticism find it hard to create that projection in their minds. Simply put, they are devoid of any goal and become a rudderless ship with time. The problem is, unlike something such as a car crash, the unfolding does not create an immediate crisis. Instead, it grows gradually. By the time people realize that they are lost in life, it is too late to make any meaningful changes. Through this video, we will show you how criticism destroys our imagination by altering an important part of our brain, and why it is similar to drifting through a calm river only to end up too far downstream to be able to paddle back. Criticism chips away our self-confidence and faith. The virtue of self-confidence is nurtured by focusing on something and then going for it. It generates a positive emotion that we love. However, someone with a past of chronic criticism can only focus on the criticism and the negative feelings it generates. They see the criticism as a problem that demands immediate solution. As a result, individuals simply want to bypass that feeling, may never visit that activity again. But why does that happen? And where do these negative emotions come from? It comes from the part of the brain responsible for processing emotions called the amygdala. The amygdala is a small almond-shaped structure nested deep within the brain. The amygdala regulates our emotional responses such as fear, anxiety, and threats. Simply put, it establishes the nature of the emotional connection with anything we do, see, or hear. People with a history of chronic criticism show rapid changes to the amygdala's functional connectivity to other parts of the brain. Their amygdala is overwhelmed by the chronic criticism and stays focused on the criticism alone, making them upset too frequently. These negative emotions make them abandon the things they love, which snowballs into underdeveloped skills and crippled imagination. All they can do is observe others and occasionally realize that they could have done better for themselves. Suffice to say, negative emotions inhibit action. Perhaps this is why the character of Cobb in the movie Inception wanted Fisher to have a positive emotional reaction to the idea of breaking up his father's business empire. A positive emotional response to the idea of breaking up the father's empire would probably make Fisher take action compared to a negative emotional response.
We need Robert Fisher to have a positive emotional reaction to all this.
This is why Leonardo rejects the initial narrative from Eames, because it is likely to generate a negative emotion within Fisher.
Well, can we run with that? We could suggest to him breaking up his father's company as a screw you to the old man.
Cobb adds that Fisher has a troubled relationship with his father. Because we all yearn for reconciliation and catharsis, a positive emotion will likely trigger that positive feeling towards his father and convince Fisher to break up his father's business. This is when Eames suggests the new narrative.
We'll try this. My father accepts that I want to create for myself, not follow in his footsteps.
That might work.
Take note that both phrases have the same end goal but differ in what emotion they trigger and the outcome they generate as a result. In the end, we see Fisher agreeing to break up his father's empire.
You know, the will means that Dad wanted me to be my own man. Not just to live for him. That's what I'm gonna do, Uncle Peter.
We learned that the fried amygdala becomes impaired as it generates negative emotional responses due to internalization of criticism. But the amygdala isn't the only candidate when it comes to imagination. Sure, it can give motivation, but imagination needs much more than that. This is where the prefrontal cortex and posterior cortex comes into picture. The posterior cortex stores all information through our senses, while the prefrontal cortex uses all that to perform complex cognitive functions. The amygdala tops all of that by attaching an emotional label to the activity. These emotional labels are often positive for people with a healthy mind. However, the ones damaged by criticism have more repulsive emotional labels derived from their past. Even if the end result of an activity feels good, they are afraid to do them again. This is why they slowly detach from many activities and stop filling their posterior cortex with newer information. Now, the prefrontal cortex has fewer things to work with, which further translates to a lack of imagination. And this lack of imagination is not limited to discrete things like poor creativity alone. Here, lack of imagination pertains to the ability to conceive a goal because the elements to imagine practical goals stems from the skills honed through years. People who suffer criticism are likely to have large voids in this area, which explains their inactivity and lack of ability to set goals. This is why these individuals appear like they lack discipline, but beneath the surface is a person who simply cannot project a desirable life into their future. But at the end of the day, we all need goals. Goals give us a purpose to work towards something and experience gratification as they come true. But for people who cannot obtain this gratification the legitimate way, resort to other methods. One of them is to indulge in daydreaming. People who have deprived themselves of experiences and crippled their imagination tend to compensate by creating fantasies and playing them in their minds repeatedly. Additionally, people may also turn towards content addiction and eating disorders, which are perceived to be subtle and do not raise any alarms right away. In fact, our sedentary lives are well designed to compensate for lack of goals and their underlying reasons. According to professionals, building a better self-image is the first step towards healing. Identify and cut out those people who critique you out of contempt. Be mindful though, do not create distance from everyone who has a different opinion than yours. Along with that, create conditions that generate a positive emotional response instead of a negative one. These can be your hobbies and the things you really enjoy doing. Pick up the things that you once quit and restart them again. The idea is to recover your amygdala and feed it as many positive emotions as possible. In fact, famous American author Napoleon Hill suggested something similar. In the 4th chapter of his book, Think and Grow Rich, Hill says that persistent, emotionally charged thoughts and desires can be implanted into the subconscious through repetition and can lead to their realization. Since emotionally charged thoughts are closely associated with the things we love, we can slowly create our reality by repeatedly doing our favorite things that generate a positive emotional response. However, be watchful of the speed you decide to make these changes. For example, say you want to switch from a finance job to something like writing suspense stories. Do not make the transition right away. Instead, learn about the skills you will need to build momentum so that you can prevent slipping back to the old world. In this case, learning character development and building storylines can be the initial steps. Failing to identify these small steps may put you in a tough spot. You will be torn between two worlds and face massive cognitive dissonance. If you want to know more about cognitive dissonance, watch this video. Link is in the description and the I button. Now that you have built some momentum, it is time to use your imagination. Set a new anchor point in the future to strive for. Something that makes you come back every day. Something that keeps you in discipline. It should be easier this time because your imagination is going to be rooted in your newly learned skills, honest approach, and positive emotions unlike before. You can also divide your goals into milestones. Achieving each milestone can give you a nugget of motivation to go further. Although temporary setbacks may trigger the negative emotions once again, one must focus on the anticipation of their goals getting accomplished and the new life unfolding. And like that, your skills will compound until it reaches a threshold to create a massive impact. Combined with the recurring positive emotional feedback, you will undergo a metamorphosis and may come back with a strong personality. You can possibly regain your confidence and may finally discover the self-defeating loop you were conditioned to internalize. It is like going back to your childhood, a phase of unburdened imagination without fear. A journey back to innocence. Please like, share and subscribe if you loved the content.